Good. Okay. Well, let's start then. Let's pick that one, since that's the top one. Put that up, and we can go discuss. Although it feels a bit redundant. We have some few people here, but anyway, here. So practical problems when we do safe PI planning. What do we need to keep in mind? So Shravansh, it was you, right? Not to put you on the spot, but you put
Yeah,
that up.
actually, I asked this question.
Do
Uh,
you want to expand on it? Expand on it a bit, maybe, to give us some context, perhaps?
yeah, I have a knowledge on SAFe on theoretical level, but I never really worked on SAFe because we generally work on small projects. But if you want to work in a SAFe, you need to have a large environment. Multiple teams has to be present. So I always wonder that what problems we will come across when we implement the SAFe PI planning, and what are the anti patterns.
Mm.
The teams generally they will do. What we have to keep in mind. You know.
Yeah.
Uh,
So have you, can I ask, have you you're doing safe already? You're doing them
no, no.
already? Or is it something you plan to do in the future? Or?
We're not doing SAFe at the moment, but something probably if I get a chance to work in SAFe in future, uh,
Okay, so
this will be
more.
helpful.
Yeah. Okay.
At the moment we are doing Scrum only.
Oh, okay. So okay, and so I mean, Melinda, you seem to know about this. So feel free to
Yeah, I can
take this.
start if you like. So there's a couple of things there you're keen on finding out on. Firstly, is there any sort of traps or anti-patterns that you want to avoid falling into with this? And then secondly, you mentioned just, how practically does this work? Because those are two main things that
Yeah,
you want to look at.
yeah,
Okay. Okay, so I work in a company that's now been running SAFe for 3 years. I only started SAFe a year and a half ago. And when we were thrown into PI planning, my first PI planning, it was a real eye-opener in a different way of doing planning. So for those who don't know, PI planning is basically big run planning. So you have what SAFe call is an art. So you may well have a big feature area that has 3, 4, 5, maybe even up to 9 teams on the Pacific area. And then because there's different levels of product management, you have your product manager working with your then above that the actual product sort of overall archie manager, and together they come up with the main key things that they think they really need to add value in that PI, which is these next 5 sprints. And the idea is at the end of the 5 sprints, all teams release together at one point. So it's a continuous cadence for a large group of teams to be able to release on a regular basis if they can't do continuous delivery for whatever reason. So the idea is there's a lot of work up front there from the product manager and product owner's perspective to get features with the team ready. So there's a lot of work there in terms of obviously client engagement and team engagement ahead of time to get those top level features ready. Now they shouldn't be to the nth degree or anything like that. That's worked out with the teams, but they should at least at that point have some kind of knowledge of or an idea of what's coming, so it's not like surprise on the day, because otherwise you would be planning for a week if you got that point. So one of the traps there you can easily fall into is that the product manager has left it really late and have started refinement with the teams on these features really late in the day. So sprint 4, sprint 5 of the 5 sprints, and everybody's chaotically trying to refine it to the point that it's ready to at least pick up by a team. So that's one thing you've really got to watch out for. You've got to keep on top of your product managers in terms of making sure there's a backlog available. The second difficult thing there is priority. So you have all these different teams. Now, ideally in SAFe or in any environment, you want to be able to have any team that can pick up anything on the wall. That's the idea. You're working a specific area. You don't want to basically go, oh, I've written this feature, only team A can do this because they've got the skills. You don't want that. But that easily happens as a trap what happens within your product area is suddenly you end up with teams who specialize in the back end, or in the client portal over here, or whatever it is, and it's basically a sham. So everyone gets to the wall, they know full well which ones they've got to pick up, and they all, oh, I'll pick up this one, and basically it's already pre-planned which teams are supposed to be having what. So that's a really easy trap for the product managers and the teams to get into, is for them to fall into the trap of, oh, I know Team Gladiator is always really good in this area, so we'll make sure we write this specifically for them. And if somebody else picks it up, we'll kind of steer them away from it, So you've got to be very careful it doesn't end up being theatre. And that is one of the traps that they easily fall into when it comes to that. Also, you need to make sure you do have all the people in the room who can help, make sure that the guys have the best chance of breaking down these features into the stories or the cards, or however you're doing it with your teams. Because if you haven't got the architects around, you haven't got your product owners, you haven't got your product managers, you'll end up with way too many questions that allow anybody to commit to anything at any point, because there'll be way too many unknowns. So making sure you have all those people together, however you do that, if it's remotely, all together, you need to make sure everybody's around, that they can grab at any point, and have those people. The main difficult thing, obviously, is actually committing to 5 sprints worth of work. Now, we find this very difficult, and I don't like it at all. I think it's ridiculous.
Is it 5? Is it 5 in safe all the time? I'm not too familiar with safe.
Yes,
So I'm not
it
sure.
is.
Is it the default of 5 sprints?
5 sprints. So over the last few years, we've been playing around with stuff. So obviously committing to 5 sprints. If you've had a team that's been together for a while, they're pretty much used to the way they're working. They know, they're comfortable kind of in how much, and breaking down things in size, and then how much they're pulling in. It's a lot easier. But it's too easy for teams to get too enthusiastic, bring way more in the first 2 sprints than they should do, not leave themselves any contingency for live issues, or, heaven forbid, actually fixing some kind of technical debt that they might have. No slack. And the first 2 sprints end up taking over sprint 3. And then what happens with having 5 sprints is PMs can find it really difficult to replan, because they tend to go out to the customers and go, all our teams have committed to all this stuff for the next 5 sprints, it's all coming. And then, of course, they're going to have to go out to the clients and go, actually, we've had to rechange the plan. So again, you've got to work with the PMs to how they tell the clients what's coming, and make sure those highest priorities are the things that are picked up first, because it should be aligned on the wall, highest priorities to low. And generally you have like a piece of paper for each feature that people can go up and mark their team against, etc. So you have those highest priorities first, because you can guarantee the lowest ones won't get to, because people won't leave enough spillover, and they shouldn't anyway. They shouldn't fill their sprints, and they shouldn't feel pressured into taking everything off the wall. And that's your next thing to look out for, is product owners and PMs pressuring their teams to take everything because it's been promised, when they know it's not going to happen. So don't put your teams under that pressure. The teams have the right to say no.
And it's perhaps obvious to say, right? But the whole point of Agile, right, is that you reduce the cycle time, right? So you don't have to plan for so long, because, well, it's hard to plan for a long period of time, and things change, and you might be wrong, and your estimates are not right, and you have slack, things happen, things go wrong, you have bugs, etc. So the more you reduce that time, the more agile you are, right, in a way. And so if you take on 5 sprints, right, so potentially if people do 2-week sprints, that's 10 weeks. That's a long time, and you lose a bit of the agility that you want to have to begin with. But then, of course, you have it's the scale, right? SAFe is meant to be for big program of work, right? That's the point of it, right? That's something to remember. So, if we step back a bit, right? What's the PI planning for? In my understanding, right, there's none of that in Scrum, right? For example. But why is that, right? It's because you do your 2-week sprint, you deliver stuff, and then you have your PI planning is basically the sprint review, right? Where you decide what to do next, right? And you don't need any special event, because it's the the horizon of the next 2 weeks is short enough that you can just do that in a couple of hours in an afternoon or something. But given the scale of what safe implies, right, if you have multiple teams and you have, I don't know, 20, 30, 50 people or something, then a couple of hours is just no way, right? You can't, right? So you end up having to actually, like, let's pause, right, and let's think about what we need to do next, right? So you have an actual planning event, which is what this is, right? That's how I sort of interpret this in my head. I don't know if that makes sense with your experience, Melinda. But yeah. So if you have lots of people, right, and you don't have this sort of planning thing, you could easily end up in a situation where you just keep delivering stuff, right? And then you go sprint after sprint and you deliver stuff, and then each little team, then they do we're out of time. The little team do their own planning for the next sprint, right? But you need to also talk to the other teams who have their own sprints, and you need to align that, and that takes a lot of time and a lot of discussion and a lot of roadmaps and features and all that stuff, right? All the stuff you never do, basically, it needs to happen at some point, and that's kind of what this is for. I think.
But the key thing is to empower your teams and, make it clear to them that they can say no. They don't have to feel pressured. They can say no. They can say, okay, we're only going to take this amount in to leave ourselves. And you know what? It's great. There's features left on the backlog, because if we can pull, then we can continue to refine them as we go. If we know in sprint 3 that actually we've managed to do sprint 4's worth of work already, awesome. We do a normal planning session. We pull in those features, and another thing as well is that in SAFE, they do break down the different types of features themselves. So you have your feature enablers, which is generally very technology based features to allow things, and then your actual value delivery features. And because you have that kind of 3 amigos, where you have your architect and your PM and your RTE, which is your release train engineer, who's supposed to coordinate the release across the many teams they have in an art, that the architects and the PM can have that discussion on, okay, we do need some enablers in there, and they need to be important to allow us to do the stuff that the PM wants down the road. So you have also that level of hierarchy that supports the teams. If they've got any technical debt that they really needs doing, they can go to the architect to then say, to have that discussion with the PM about getting stuff in. So that's also very useful to make sure that all bases are covered in terms of work that the teams as well as the product management consider to be important in general. And another thing is just experiments, because what works for one set of arts will work differently for another. And just have, again, at the end, those retrospective moments where you can collect information, or however you want to do it, and just improve like you would any time for next time. What worked well, what didn't work well. They are very draining. I mean, generally they're put down as 2 days, and in SAFE it's prescribed that you have an inspect and adapt at the front. I can tell you now, do not ever do that on the first day, because it's really heavily talked about the metrics and stuff like that. I tell you what, nothing puts your teams to sleep faster than discussing for an hour the metrics of the previous PI, and then asking everybody, how can we improve all that? And then, by the way, we're now going to plan 5 sprints. So break that up. We have our inspect and adapt on a different day before it, generally like a week before, a couple of days before.
Sounds intense.
It is intense. The teams are exhausted, and you've got to plan breaks and stuff in. So make sure that happens, because it is very mind intensive. It does kill you.
Does that make sense, Sharon?
Yeah, that's a great explanation. Thank you very much.
Because I've in fact I published a video recently. I was talking about sprint reviews, and I've always, without thinking about SAFE at all, but I was thinking that there's always I always feel like it's too rushed, even in normal Scrum. Like you do your sprint, and then okay, quickly we need to prepare the next sprint, and boom, we start again, right? And it's not quite as intense as this PI planning sessions, but it does feel rushed, right? And to me at least, and it feels like there's no real time to really understand what we've developed, right? What we've developed this thing for 2 weeks, we put it out there, and we ask the product owner, okay, what do you think? And all they see is a demo, maybe at the sprint review. There's no way with this you have time to really evaluate whether that was the right thing to develop, right? Or are the users happy with it? Well, you don't know yet. You've just released it.
I think you've just very nicely segued onto the next topic. I don't know if you've realised that.
I have, yeah.
So, do we want to carry on with this one?
Good, yeah.
Or thumbs down?
Good question. In fact, I should.
I suppose Sharon is a good person for this if you want to carry on with this topic or move on to the next as well as Alistair.
Yeah, I'm happy to move on to the next one. I think I would love to understand more about this and what you're doing, because when we had our discussion a week or so ago, and we were debating whether or not we should use a scaled framework at all, the winning side was those who voted, who argued against a such a thing. And I'm just intrigued, and really from an intellectual and a practical perspective, would love to spend more time, not today, but more time on this, because everything you're saying, Melinda, is really helpful, and all it's doing is making me more certain that we shouldn't be using.
I hate SAFe. I'm going to say it now. I hate SAFe. SAFe is just terrible.
But I think any form of scaled. In my own experience, I was the lead product owner for 10 Scrum teams, 10 fully functioning Scrum teams. Wow. We did that without any form of superstructure, if you will, or exoskeleton, whatever you want to call it. We managed, and we ran for 2 years and delivered a whole bunch of amazing stuff in that time. And each team, was did their own thing, and there were places where we brought things together. There were delivery managers and so on who brought things together, but really they were working autonomously. So that's just one thing to look at. And I've just started watching a couple of videos about Spotify and what they did. And they started with Scrum. It was the guy who did Product Owner in a Nutshell. He did that little video, and he's done yes, the one. And he's done 2 little videos on how Spotify work. And I've just started watching the first one. And he starts with this premise that they started with Scrum. When they had one team, that was great. When they then had more teams, they found that Scrum itself was getting in the way. And so they just basically said, well, the teams are mature, shu-ha-ri kind of thing. We're at Ri. So, this is where we break the rules. This is where we know enough, and we are professional enough, and we're confident enough to be agile rather than do agile. And I'm very looking forward to watching the rest of the videos to see what happened and how they got on. But I wonder how much. I wonder how much scaled frameworks actually really do inhibit agility.
Well, we're changing everything now. So a number of our teams are all moving to continuous planning. So there's a number of things out there you can look at the moment around continuous planning.
Okay. Yeah. I would love to continue.
And some of the teams are experimenting with just planning 3 sprints and then allowing the 2 as sort of the contingency sprints. Sure. So we have different arts around the place, trying different things to see what works better. So as a company, I think that's great that we're at the point now where we're experimenting.
No, that's awesome. I'd love to pick up with you, Melinda, if I may, and
yeah, feel free
and discuss this further. So I'll try and hook up with you later.
No, that's great.
Fascinating. Thank you for sharing all of that. Sounds
good. My problem with SAFe is not so much SAFe itself, but it feels like it's a necessary evil, in the sense that we're big, we're scaled up, we have lots of people, lots of big team, big program of work, therefore we need something. But I would then question that the assumption that you know, we are big, therefore, why are you so big to begin with? Because
No,
you know,
exactly. And I think you're big if you decide to take that decision that you want to move fast in some way. But in and this is what we did. But what we then had is, rather than put a structure around it, what we focused on was strong leadership and a strong vision. And leadership that was very much enabling and serving the teams by making sure that that the teams were at their best. So, you know, we were supporting the Scrum Masters and the other product owners and the individual coders and so forth to be their best selves. Which is obviously fantastically time intensive as a leader to do that, but it just really worked because that was the job. You know, there was nothing else to do but deliver this incredible product. So,
and again, anything like that basically goes away from the agile principles that were designed in the first place. You know, delivering fast, getting value, getting feedback quickly, all these extra layers just takes you a little bit further away.
Feels like it gets in the way. So anyway.
Indeed.
Sorry. Next one.
No, it's good. Sorry.
So it's a good job there's only 5 of us. Or 4. I thought we had a fifth one.
I'm letting you get away with discussing more because it's just us. So yeah, this one is from me actually, and it's something that I apologize that I keep seeing all the time, and this is what I call output versus outcome. So what I mean by output is, you know, just features, stuff we deliver, and outcome being the getting value from those outputs. And most people are just obsessed with outputs and features, you know, speed and velocity, and we need more stuff quicker. And nobody ever really talk about value or outcome, which goes back to
why are we doing this?
Yes, and it goes back to the point I made earlier with the sprint review, that, you know, we've done those features, and then you do a demo, and then go, oh yeah, okay, good, we've done those features. Now we do the next bunch. But you know, we don't ask the question where those features are even valuable. What's the outcome from them? Are they actually useful? Are they actually valuable? Do people use them? Do people not? Do they like those features? You know, all these questions are rarely asked, rarely tackled. And you can't just tackle them in a meeting. You know, it needs time. You would need an actual product management sort of, I say product management, a product focus rather than project focus, if you know what I mean here, where we look at the product. Is it a good product? Do people like it? Do people keep coming back to it? Do people, you know, does it actually solve the problem that they had to begin with? And that takes time and effort, and it's often something that I don't see. And when I talk about this, people agree with me, but that's it. You know, there's a sort of natural tendency to go back into this output focused mindset of, okay, what do I need to deliver? We need to deliver that in 2 weeks. Let's have some estimates and da. Right.
And this comes back to your point of not having a break, doesn't it? So
yeah,
when you said originally it's not having a break. So I'm a big believer in actually having a break between sprints, even if it's just half a day, to do exactly what you said. Have a look at the product, actually putting something in the product when it's released that allows you to get metrics back, that what parts of the product are people most using, what are they recording the most problems against, or that sort of thing, and allow the team to actually spend some time evaluating that.
And it's not a break of we do nothing for a couple of days.
No.
Right? It's a break of delivery, right? But it's not a break of work, right? Because we need to get on with the discovery aspect of things, right? Was this the right thing to do? Maybe we need to survey the users. Maybe we need to observe them using the product, right, to get a feel for how they use it. Do they use it the right way? Do they, etc., etc. That takes a lot of effort and a lot of work, actually. So you know, it's not so much of a break.
Yeah, but David, a quick question on that. When you refer to the team as doing that, what you just described, I would have thought that you know, I would expect the Scrum Master, the product owner, and the senior and some stakeholders, executives, to be involved in that process of release the features and then get the feedback from users, as Melinda said. what they're looking at, what they like, what they don't like, where the problems, where the issues, and then the product backlog gets refined, and then some new ideas go in, maybe some bugs, etc. But you go in and that then trickles up to the top of the product backlog, and then that goes into the following sprint.
Yeah.
So I suppose I'm totally with you on the fact that there is an issue between outcome and outputs. But I'm wondering who are these people that are obsessed with it, and how is that obsession trickling down to the team? Because the product owners should be protecting the team from any vanity requests and anything else that is coming down from above, and making sure that that team is focused, and it's the product owner's job to be focused on value. So I'm just in terms of picking that, and obviously, the team is cross-functional, it's self-organizing, it's autonomous, everyone's in it together, we all want to deliver the thing, and we want to do that. I'm wondering, what are the pressures that are coming down to the team level, where all they're doing is delivering features?
So I think, sorry, go on.
No. Because what what happens if you do that is your number of bugs start to do that. Your technical debt goes out of control, and you find yourself in problems quite quickly. Now, I think personally, I think that the area where we get this problem from is you've got somebody who is paying out X tens of thousands of pounds per month, sometimes hundreds of thousands of pounds per month for a team. And you obviously, and you're doing time and materials, you're sort of spending money on a scrum team, however much that costs, 9, 10 people for a month, whatever that costs. You then want to say, well, what am I actually getting for that? And it's easier to track features than it is sometimes to track value. And I think it's down to us as a professional community to be helping each other to find those metrics, to then help educate all of those around us in a 360-degree way, because we all, I think, in Agile, when we get to the point where we're all leaders and we all think of ourselves as leaders in an Agile team, whether we are the newest coder, or we are the most senior person on the board of directors, if we all feel that we actually own what's going on here, and then our influence then is in all directions, because then that new coder can go, do you know what, if we do this product is going to fall over in 8 months' time because of X. That conversation needs to be brought out, and not a case of, sorry, you're too new to know what you're talking about, sort of thing. Sorry, I've gone off topic there. But,
no, it's all right. Yeah. I think the main cause of this, at least in my experience, is that us and them thing. So the us, the team, where you're just the developers. You don't need to you don't need to know about the outcome. You don't need to know if the feature is useful, or that's not your job. You're just here to type code, kind of thing. I mean, I say this in I'm being cynical, but it's almost like that.
I've actually heard that.
Yeah.
Directly to the team.
Yeah, you're just a developer. You're here for the delivery, right? And we, the product managers and the rest of the business, will worry about whether it was useful or not, and we'll talk to the users and so on. And that separation is I think what's at the heart of this.
Yeah.
But this comes back to original command and control mentality. This is where businesses truly haven't taken the Agile principles and just the actually good bits that you want to have agility for, which is use everybody to their best skill and best mind to produce the best product that you get. And this is where companies stop empowering people. So if you look at something like gov.uk, I used to work on HMRC projects for gov.uk. They are incredibly focused on having user researchers within the team. And in fact, that you can't release anything unless every single sprint, a user researcher has spoken to 10 people per sprint, based on the stuff that you've created the sprint before. So that might actually be a bit extreme in cases. But because they've got that focus in mind of, okay, usability wise, how is this working and what value is it bringing? Are we
Mm.
decreasing the number of steps to make
Mm.
tax or any other part of the government stuff, which is incredibly boring but also very difficult to get through? Are we making this easy for the users? Are we doing the right thing? And because they're listening to people within the teams, because that's the team's mandate,
Yeah.
they have to prove they're doing this, and they have to prove they've made the right decisions every the gateway that they do, that it becomes truly fundamental. And they work very closely with the product owners and then also the product managers at that point. But I've been in position exactly the same as you, where the teams haven't felt empowered. They have literally just felt like feature factories, and nothing they're saying. And even to the point where the product manager is doing the designing of the page, handing it down and expecting nobody to question. It's just, so it really depends on the company, but it's whether the company is actually taking it seriously and using the people that they're hiring. What's the point of hiring the people with an incredible amount of skill and knowledge and intelligence if all you're going to do is tell them to basically put toilet roll holders together in
So
return?
it's absolutely right. And then I've seen basically two cases. Well, there's two cases in my head there that I'm thinking. There's the case where there's some some companies that really just ignore value and outcome altogether. It's insane. I don't know how they survive really, but they, especially large companies where they with internal products where they, the incentive is on doing a project on time and on budget, and that's it. Nobody cares whether it's actually useful, which is crazy. But they at some point someone does care, but not at the level of the the project manager or where the team is involved, and that's really hard then, because nobody seemed to care about the value, right? There was someone thought about the value that this thing could bring early on, right, to be able to justify a budget and get the money and get the project going. But once it's going, nobody checks whether the stuff delivered actually helps. It's absolutely insane. But there are some companies that are much better than that, of course, and then they do check, right? But again, it's a us and them, so it's a different track. It's different people doing it at a different pace and a different cadence from the sprints.
And again, using your sprint reviews the right way as well. Actually getting your team to ask. Okay, you've decided to do this. What is the value of this? What we're going to give our users with this? What's the most important thing to our users? Too many sprint reviews are just used as a demo, and not even a very good demo, because you haven't got the people in the room with you. You're not actually letting them try the software to get their feedback there and then, which is even better. You're just doing it on the screen and sending a video out or whatever it is. Just using those feedback points correctly in the most optimal way you can. And Alice there hit the nail on the head. The most problems I've had with teams, not problems with teams, most issues that the team has raised is that they don't understand the vision of what they're doing.
Yes.
If you have the right leadership and the correct vision, and everybody understands what it is that you're trying to achieve, and that's revisited regularly and repeated and clear and transparent to everybody, then everyone is on board and they feel that they can own that more and they can also add to it. When that changes willy-nilly, or you have the loudest customer shouting for something, for the one thing they want that isn't really important to anyone else, but they're threatening to pull out of whatever contract, and you say, okay, we're changing, this is our highest priority now. Everyone's going, well, what's the point of this? People then lose confidence in the company that they can make those decisions and also stick to the vision that they've sold in the first place. As I said, it's right, vision is everything. If you've got that, then people can, or at least got something to argue against. You said we were doing this, we're now veering off down here at a tangent. How is that going to help us achieve that vision that you put for us in the next 3 months, 6 months, year, whatever it is? It gives something that people can anchor themselves against.
Yep, very good. Are we done with that topic, or is there more?
I think again a lot more to talk about, but let's move on.
Let's move on. That's all right. And this, cool. Up, there we go. This one, I think, yeah. So yeah, this is I can know the answer to that, but it's something that I see people asking a lot. So, Scrum being the default approach that most people fall into is the default. People don't really ask themselves the question, what method I should use. They just go for Scrum, and they go for 2-week sprints, and that's it. So I hear this question a lot from people, and I've got my take on what this is, but I'll just be quiet for a second and see what you guys think. But I mean, there are other methods out there like Kanban, DSDM, and all sorts of other things. I mean, we've talked about SAFe earlier, but
I heard something very interesting. I was watching a video about just explaining. It was I think it was one of the trainers, PSTs, part of Scrum.org, and he was doing a little tap-out video type thing.
Oh yeah.
And his basic premise was what is Agile, and he was going through and he was explaining it's a mindset, blah blah blah, and then under Agile you have all these different frameworks, Scrum, Kanban, blah blah blah, all of that. And he said something that has really resonated with me, which was the best framework has probably not yet been invented. And it was just kind of like, wow, so many people are getting really hung up on the frameworks, and we know those guys are doing that book on zombie Scrum and all this kind of stuff,
Yeah.
and where it's just, again, we're using we're breaking the fundamental Agile values just right there, in that we are focusing on processes rather than focusing on people. And again, I keep coming back to leadership. It's if we can get our leaders to understand that team, for the first 8 months of a new team working in an agile way, they're just going to absolutely go crazy, and it's going to be amazing what they do. But then I find after about 8 months, things start to plateau and start to come down again, for a number of reasons. But I think most of it is when it's the leadership who doesn't understand that team has now moved from extrinsic motivation to autonomy, mastery, and purpose in their own way, or are moving along that continuum. And you've moved from plan driven to agile along that continuum, but the leadership needs to then also move away from command and control to that emotionally intelligent, enabling servant leadership to support these teams. And I think that every time that doesn't happen is when teams will try Scrum, try Agile, try Scrum, try whatever for a period, and maybe up to a year or whatever, and then give up at some point because things haven't happened. I'm loving what I'm hearing from Melinda and your organization, where they are not throwing things out of the door. They're actually saying, let's evolve, is what it feels like.
Yes,
from the way you're describing it. I think that's exciting because, and again, I come back to that Spotify example, they kind of go like, let the teams work out what's best for them, and don't get so rigid with your approaches, because if things stop working, you take out a sprint review, for example, let's say, and then after a time certain things will start to falter, and you go, do you know what, we should maybe put that back again, and then you keep that for a while. But you need to be flexing, you need to be moving rather than rigidly wanting to do something the whole time.
Now, there's an interesting parallel there with the Shu Harry, which I think you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Because if you're really new to all of this, so you're Shu level, then you need the definition of a Shu level, right? Is that you want a recipe.
Absolutely.
I don't know what I'm doing. Tell me what to do. That's
absolutely
the attitude, right?
And that's great. And I think so for me, Scrum fits that really, really well.
Yeah, exactly. So in those cases, we need people to, well, just do 2 week sprints, just do Scrum, and then we'll see, right?
Yeah.
And that's where it become a bit prescriptive. Like just do that, just follow that recipe, and then we'll see. Yeah. But that's that bit, right? We'll see. That doesn't necessarily happen, and people get stuck on that process, and therefore we must follow that. And even though it probably made them more successful than they were before, they need to also, what's the word? Let it go, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
We became better, but it doesn't mean we need to stick with it. Maybe we need.
No, exactly. You need to continuously evolve.
Right. exactly, and break the rules, which is the
Mm.
ha, and become a re eventually, right?
Yeah.
And
maybe we,
recognizing those
yeah.
wastes, that that's why
Yeah.
when Scrum Bang comes into it, why are we having
Yeah.
these 2-week plannings? Why aren't we just doing iterative
Yeah.
planning as we go along? We've got
Mm.
3-4 things left in the
Yeah.
column. Let's do some more planning.
Yeah.
Why are we waiting every 2 weeks to do this stuff? It's
Mm.
There's a
it's
team
that
I work with,
evolution.
a team I worked with maybe 3 months ago. So they were breaking down their stories, right, and maybe 2 or 3 days to implement, and then very nice vertical slices. So the stuff was really nice and valuable, and it was ready after 2 days. And then I suggested, well, let's just show it to the main users that are interested. So we have to wait for the sprint review. That's in 2 weeks. Well, or 10 days or whatever it was.
It's like, why? You can
And
release it tomorrow if they like it.
why do you want to wait? I don't understand. Because that's the process. That's the rules,
Yeah.
And like, no. But they really looked, well, they kind of looked at me weird when I said, well, let's just show it now. Like, why wait? But by saying this, I was breaking the sprint, right? In their eyes, I was breaking the idea of a sprint. So they're like, no, can't have that, right? And I really had to sort of, what's the word, massage, right? So, well, explain
Go
that.
back
Why
to the agile values.
yeah, and then why wait for that 2-week thing, and why wait for that meeting? Just show it to him. I mean, he's like sitting over there, I just go and talk to the guy.
Exactly.
It felt insane that we had to wait, right? Such a waste of time, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's like you said, Alistair, that when the process becomes that dogmatic thing that has to be followed because it is, right? And
Yeah.
it's
as you said at the beginning, it's useful when we're starting out. When we are learning it, when we are, the Scrum Guide. Just what an amazing document. Really, just really good for us to get our handle on things. But again, you need to be, if your team isn't moving through hire and re quickly, then they're not evolving, which is, I think, part of one of the questions I have is, how do we make sure that people are actually really using their brains, using their intellect in being Scrum, in being Agile, sorry. And because they shouldn't just be going like, okay, I come in Monday morning, click, punch in, and I start doing this work. That's not how it goes. We're all evolving and so on, and we should have people who come in as as coders or whatever, and aspiring to be leading their own teams and so on. Soon with the skills they're learning.
So the difficulty there for me is then, if you have a team, let's say, that's doing Scrum, and then they want to sort of go beyond sprinting for the reason we just talked about, and then moving the more sort of continuous Kanban like thing. Okay, good. But what about the teams who sort of say, I don't like sprinting, Kanban because we can't be bothered with sprinting, right? And then in this case, they're kind of doing it for the wrong reasons.
Yes, they are.
Right? They're just being lazy, or and I'm saying this not in a patronizing way so much as it could just be unconsciously, like we just don't like this stuff, so let's get rid of it, right? So it's really difficult to make that distinction, right? Have we matured enough that we can go beyond it, or are we fooling ourselves in in thinking that we're ready, where really we're just being I'm not sure what the word is, you know what I mean?
I do, and I think, and I think again, if around that team you've got the right people, if one of the product owner or the Scrum Master in our Scrum example is has been around long enough, is mature enough to understand these things, then they can help spot that's not a good place to be, and you don't want to go down there, because the following things will start to happen. And again, it comes back to leadership, but we keep doing that.
And that's what coaching is for, isn't it? Also,
absolutely.
to ask them, okay, then, so you think this stuff is a waste? Let's actually draw out our whole development workflow. Yeah. Where are the handoffs happening? What's the waste happening? What time is being spent here and there? Where can we reduce that? Is it actually the ceremonies and stuff is the problem, or is it the fact that that something over here is We've got handoff to a different team that does that allows us to release stuff somewhere, whatever it is that the problem, you know? Well, and get them to drill that down before they make those
and also
those
what
decisions.
And what you just said, Melinda, about drawing out the actual process. I hesitate to say that word, but how do we actually work, as opposed to how we wish we worked, right? Because you could wish to be continuous and without sprinting and so on.
Well, but I think you have to do that. I think you have to draw it out and draw out what is actually happening, and then draw out what should be happening. We took 5 Scrum teams in one organization, and we tripled their velocity in 9 sprints. We tripled their velocity, and we did that because we used the retrospectives to really break these things down, and to go in and sort of say, okay, why? It was simple things like the testers were waiting until the end of the sprint to do all the testing, right? For example, right? So it's just like, okay. Classic. We stopped doing that right now. Next thing was the environments were being locked down every so often because it belonged to a different team. So our environments were locked, so we couldn't then put things into UAT and all this kind of stuff. So again, we worked ways around, and each time we took an issue, used your voting concept, and we just said, right, these 2 weeks. The leadership, me and the others, are going to solve that. You guys crack on, and by the end of this, hopefully we'll come back and we'll have a better way of doing things. And we chipped away, and we just kept, pumping up that velocity.
I can't work for you, Alistair. It sounds amazing.
But and it was, but that's when this thing is fun, though, isn't it? I mean, it's I have a tagline on my email, and it says, obviously it needs to be something which will work with Agile, but it says, if it's not fun, it's not Scrum, which is, and we should be having fun with this thing. We should be enjoying it. We should be looking forward to coming into work on a Monday morning like crazy, to meet back up with our best ever buddies, and we are building stuff together, like you're going back to school and it's the playground, and you were just like performing and learning and sharing and evolving and all these amazing things. And I think this is where, again, I'm imagining that once maybe while you were talking earlier, Melinda, I just had this vision in my head that once coronavirus is gone and there's some space on the streets to do some more marching and some demonstrations, we should all go around with plaques saying no command and control. On autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And we just have the entire the entire Agile community coming out and just saying, stop what you're doing, stop working for people who insist on being that type of leader. And
whereas my tagline on mine is advocate of Agile and protector of common sense. Because
I love that. That's beautiful.
That's good.
That's mine. That's my tagline.
That's very good. That's very good. I like that a lot.
A lot of it is common sense, isn't it? But it's not very common. So yes. Right. I realized I didn't put the timer on this one, but I think
that's all right.
It's all right. We can probably.
Did we answer the question?
That one?
I think we did.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. Sorry, I'm just.
I think the answer. The crazy answer is I think it depends. And the answer is yes, you should evolve.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, no, that's it. All right, let's take that one maybe. I think it's a good segue with what you just said, Alistair, as well. How do we keep learning and keep evolving, right? Ooh, apologies. So how can we make sure our teams are continuously developing their agile professionalism?
So this is I'm a chartered accountant by background, and one of the things that we must do as part of being an accountant is that we have something called CPD, continuous professional development, and you have to either attend courses which carry points, CPD points with them, or you need to prove every year that you have evolved, basically, that you have developed some new skills, etc. And they can be in almost anything in any area. And I wonder about the reason, some of the traps that we fall into that we've talked about up to this point. I wonder how much of that is because we read the Scrum Guide once, and never again. And then we basically follow our Scrum Master into, you know, one ceremony after the other, and we never think. we never
Do the
evolve.
empiricalism.
Yeah, time to think.
We never evolve our, you know, we never stop and think about Agile and what it actually is and what it means and what it does. Which is why I say the last few meetups have been so amazing, because they've actually forced us to do that. Including this one, forcing us to sort of think, do we really need that thing, you know, and why are we doing it? Not just, you know, not just following it because someone said so, but everyone should be asking, why are we doing that? Not in a, you know, not in a sort of a, you know, I just can't be bothered kind of way, but really, oh yeah, that does make sense to keep doing that.
So is it fair to say, I mean, in the Scrum setting, the retrospective is that's kind of what it's for.
Mm-hmm.
So in your head, is that not sufficient then for work?
I'm thinking beyond that. I'm thinking individually as you know,
training, and how do I train myself to get better?
How do I train myself? Yes, how do I train myself? So not just, you know, getting better at coding or we're getting better at testing, getting better, whatever. But I'm thinking in terms of becoming a I'm trying to find the right word here, but becoming somebody who can have a conversation about Agile, which has your experiences and your knowledge beyond your experiences, to bring that to bear, so that you can articulate the arguments and the whys and wherefores of it. You know, so that you're not like the example of when I was first learning Agile, and I was, you know, looking for everything I could find on it, and then this guy gets on, this couple of guys get on a train. I'm coming back in from London. They get on the train, and one of them is going like, "Oh man, I'm so excited! Yeah, we started doing this Agile thing." You know, my ears prick up. I'm just like all excited about hearing this. And he goes, "Yeah, man, it's amazing. There's no planning."
No.
Exactly. And it's just like, wow. And back then I didn't know enough to, I knew enough only to be shocked. I mean, I think it was my accountancy background that was shocked by that concept. But it was, you know, we need to all be in the space where we all know that your reaction to that comment is the reaction that everyone should have, and know why that reaction is the reaction, and not kind of go, "Oh, no planning, that sounds cool," or whatever. I'm using a crazy example, but
it's true.
I'm just wondering about how much we do that. It doesn't take much, but you know, how do we watch one video a week on, you know, on Agile? Do we challenge ourselves as to why we're doing what we're doing? Have we read, you know, more than once the various you know, amazing tomes that are out there?
As David Marquette would say, if you've ever read the Turn the Ship Around book,
it's a great book.
Just being curious is the best way to learn everything. And so many of us, including myself, I know I've done it many times. You're in a situation, you're having the same, you're seeing people making the same mistakes, and you think, oh, here we go again. And you suddenly get into that kind of lecturing mode. Then you think, wait a minute, no, stop yourself here. Just because you've heard similar things before doesn't mean it's happening for the same reasons. And you know, actually stopping yourself and go, actually, no, I'm just curious. Okay, explain to me your process. You know, what's happening here? Why was those decisions made? All those sorts of things. And then having that open discussion, and also really getting, especially I'm a Scrum Master, you probably have guessed by now. I'm a Scrum Master. And I'm always saying to people, look, challenge me, anything that I say, because my type of personality is I think first. Well, I say first, then I think. So sometimes I will correct myself as I go. But I say to people that always challenge me what I'm saying, because just because I should be the expert in this doesn't mean I actually am. It doesn't mean I haven't considered any other possibility. So feel free to challenge me. And that's what you want every member of the team to be able to feel comfortable enough to do. And people learn once they can actually feel free to challenge people and have those courageous conversations and all those things that you read up about and things, and have that psychological safety, which is the most difficult thing. in any environment to come up with. Have a point where the team is happily debating with each other over things because they care and they want to understand more. And that's what you kind of want, the environment you want to create, because when you get that environment, then people will proactively go away and learn more. If they're just told what to do, when to do it, when they're expected to do things, they won't bother.
Yeah,
and I think there's a psychology here too, because some people are just naturally curious. They just want to learn. They'll go to meetups like this one, and others they'll read books and watch YouTube videos about this and that all the time. But there are people who just won't do that, right? I know a few like this, and it's fine, right? I mean, you can't just force people to be super enthusiastic about this, right? But I think one thing that helped me as well is, hang on, step back. So let's say you have a team where everybody wants to learn and everybody is like a bit like us now, we want to keep thinking about this, and but then the process, hear that word again, doesn't really let you do that, right? So you end up with a team that might be frustrated, right, because they don't get to learn enough or as much as they would love to, simply because there's no space for it, right? And so one thing I love to do with teams is to, before we do anything, at the very start, right, of a project or a team gets together for the first time and we haven't worked together together before, is to have a bit of a value game, right, where you say, okay, what are our values as a team? What do we actually strive for as individuals and together? So is it excellence? Is it technical excellence? Is what I mean. Is it learning? Is it respect? There's a whole bunch of values you could come up with, right? And of course, everybody will have different values, right? And there's so many values out there, and they're all good, right? You can't have them all, so you have to actually pick as a team what is the top 4, top 5 that we actually want to, as a group, as a team, want to. That's really what we are about in this little group of people. And if learning is one of them, if learning comes up, right, then okay, now you could have that on the board or something on the wall, and say, right here, learning is one of our thing, right? So how do we do that now, right? Let's now brainstorm actual practices, right, to actually actively do it. Do we have a lunch and learn every week or something?
Brilliant.
Friday at lunchtime. Do we
brown bags are fantastic.
brown bag lunch or whatever it is you do, right? But you can now brainstorm about practices and things you actually do to satisfy that value that you've put up there on the wall as a thing, right? And then you can then review that in a sort of retrospective way, right? That okay, we have those values, but did we live up to them this sprint, right? Did we skip the learning because we were too busy with this, fixing this or delivering that? Did we, if we really value this thing, why does it get dropped off at the first problem, for example, and things like that, right? And it sounds simple, but just having that, if learning is a thing, right? That if it's then explicitly saying it is a thing we value, and therefore what are the steps we take to make it a reality?
Yeah.
Just extension of what Melinda said, psychological safety. We Scrum Masters generally use 2 strategies to bring that psychological safety in the organization. One is inside out. We will start with the team and started explaining agile practices principles to them, and the other one is outside in, where we will start with the leadership and explain the agile practices and principles. In my opinion, it has to come from the leadership, because they can create that environment where the team members, they can have the fear of failure, and they can openly say whatever they say. They agree to disagree in certain situations, and at the same time they don't have any fear of conflict. So this has to come from the leadership, in my opinion. So the leadership has to create that conducive environment.
Yeah, absolutely. Psychological safety, I mean, is the thing, right, that allows you to what's the word, to say, oh, I've got this idea, it's a bit crazy, but I'm going to say it anyway. Right, that's when you have psychological safety, where you have this stupid idea and you want to say it, but there's nothing stopping you from saying it, right? And then
Yeah.
you're just going to go for it. And if it's stupid, people will tell you, but you don't, not in a
But you shouldn't be afraid of the
shutting down
judgment.
thing, right? Yes, like so it's
Mm.
and they've got your back, right? So if you say something stupid or you do get, then they've got your back, right? That you have a team that is there to support you, and if and you can experiment, right? That's the keep evolving thing here in your
Mm.
topic, right? That you have to experiment, right? Because
Yeah.
you could think about stuff in the abstract for very long about whether we should or should not do this, right? But at some point you got to really try it, really, because you could have arguments, pros and cons, and debate forever. But at some point, right, you just got to. Well, we want to do this practice, right? We want to do TDD. Okay, is TDD a thing for us or not? Right? Okay, well let's do it, right, for a month or whatever, or more, or 6 months, and see, right, is this real pain or is this actually really cool? Don't really know. Like let's just try it, for example. But you got to have that safety for that one person who says, I really want to try TDD, but if I say it, people are going to think I'm crazy, so I just won't. And that's where you have a problem. Does that make sense, Shravan?
Yeah, that is true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I completely agree that most times that I have come across psychological safety issues is because you got the leadership telling the teams that they can experiment and do things and stuff, and the next day they come home and go, right, we've had our clients come over and they've said we've got to hit this date, so you've got to do everything possible, and you think that you've had plan learning wise going out the window, you're doing overtime, you're doing this, oh yeah, and don't, we're scrapping this technical debt stuff that you'd put down in the list to do, and it just kills it. Because there's no consistency, and
well, it's very fragile, right? It's a very fragile thing. It takes a lot of effort to build up, and it takes pretty much nothing to destroy it, right? you just need the wrong email send or something to the team, right? That sends the wrong tone, and you go, oh gosh, okay, what's happening here? And then you close down, right? Like, if there's an email, let's say, coming and saying, oh, we have a reduction in budget, and one of us is going to have to go, you go, oh, okay, is it going to be me next? You don't know, right? You start looking around, and do you know what I mean? Straight away, that's natural, right? You're gonna go back into survival mode, so you're gonna think about you first rather than the team, and then poof, it's gone.
Have we answered your question, Alistair?
Oh yeah, no, I say it's a general ongoing sort of question, but absolutely no, it's some good ideas in there. Thank you. Very good. I just wanted also to test how important you felt it was, and it sounds like you agree that it is important.
And it's the most thing that is the least looked at by companies. Is
yes, I mean what I
self-progression.
No, it is what I the two thoughts which I had. One was is how many people are doing this on their own time, so they're not waiting for a 15-minute, 20-minute, whatever hour gap in the week, but they're actually doing this as part of for themselves. The second thing is one thing I did to start. I don't know how well it landed. I never got anybody telling me to stop. But what I would do is I went through the Scrum guide. I took out each paragraph one at a time, and over 21 weeks, I sent out the paragraph with some thoughts and with some links to to either books and or videos which talked about that particular subject in a bit more detail, because I wanted for people to just for a week focus on one thing at a time and just have a think about whatever what is the Scrum Master role, what is the product owner role, how do we do this, what does done mean, etc., just each of those subjects. And I went through this cycle, and it was interesting. It was a 21-week cycle to get through the entire work.
Did you find that I can only imagine, but I'll speculate here, but that some people perhaps just jump on this, oh, that's good and stuff, and then did it, and some others who just, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And I wasn't. I say my instinct was, if you know, I looked for feedback to tell me if this was getting in the way and it was annoying people, but
Yeah.
otherwise I assumed that there were people out there who were interested. Out of, you know, we had 10 teams, so we had, you know, over 150 people that this was going out to every week. And I generally those that responded seemed to be, you know, sort of either positive or at least being kind. So I continued until the end.
I'm the same.
But,
I keep a page, or I regularly post all the user groups in my local area for my teams, and
yeah.
I'll post every month. I'll update my wiki or whatever it is in whichever company I do it. Every company I go, and they update all the things, you know, what the topics are, etc. People sometimes go, sometimes people
not.
never went. But in my
Yeah.
mind, I was like, well, if they don't know it's there, they haven't got the opportunity.
Indeed.
And
Yeah.
it took me 10 minutes a month to update.
Absolutely. And if one person out of those 150 was getting something really useful out of it and
Yeah.
growing and learning, then that was good, is how I felt.
So in my company, we have an agile COP, as we call it. So COP being a community of practice, right? And with a Slack channel. And quite often I want me or other people, we would post, you know, something like a blog we've seen or a video of someone, so something controversial, even better, you know, or something we disagree with, right, or agree with, or whatever, right? But you just post the thing and say, oh, this guy says this, here's an idea, and debate, right? Or what do you
Sure.
think, or that kind of thing. And then people tend to kind of, especially when they disagree, they're like, oh, I can't let that go. I need to say that it's wrong, you know. I have to reply. You know,
Brilliant.
Yeah, we're the same. We've got a really great agile community, and we've got 30 Scrum Masters,
Wow.
12 RTEs, in terms, and we've got an agile community, and we always have a meeting every week where we talk about just topics that people are interested in, and it makes such a difference. We run our own training courses and stuff like that, you know.
Brilliant.
I planned and helped organise and trained in an agile boost camp for our Scrum Masters last year, and that was a big thing for me. And it's just lovely to have that, you know, chance that you can bounce ideas off people, because but the problem is with companies, they do that a lot sometimes for their Scrum Masters and their POs and PMs, and then they forget their dev teams. So the last two companies have also had a really active developer community and test community as well, and they've had brown bags and all that sort of stuff regularly going on. But sometimes, yeah, they're often quite happy to send Scrum Masters and POs and stuff. The people they've already signed up to all this, you know, you're preaching to the converted, on lovely, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, because it's not, on lovely conferences and stuff. And then they forget to send the people actually you're still trying to convince, like the developers, etc., on these things as well, and asking them to bring knowledge back.
And you know that. Sorry, go on.
I say that's another thing, is just, you know, give your people on the ground the opportunities to go to conferences, and leave early to go to meetups and stuff like that.
But it makes me think of so one with the agile community practice I mentioned. We I had this issue at some point that it was always the same people coming back. Right, we had the usual suspects who are enthusiastic and they want to learn and they keep coming, and that was great for that reason. But there was a whole bunch of people who I felt they really needed to come, but didn't. Right, and I'm like, okay, how do I get those guys to come? Right, but then a lot of them were the shoe Harry thing, with shoe level people, and they perhaps, and I'm going to sound patronizing, but they perhaps didn't know they needed to know this stuff, right? They felt, well, you know, there's this process called Scrum, and well, I've understood it, I think, and so that's it. What's to talk about, you know? That we there's nothing to talk about. We do the sprint, we code, and we do a demo, and then there's the next sprint, and then there we go, right?
And I think, yeah.
So they didn't know it would be useful for them, right?
Exactly.
And because then you have these usual suspects who kept coming, then it became, of course, our level of discussion was quite high. You know, it was not for beginners, right? Let's say.
Yeah.
So it would put people off as well, right?
Sure.
Because as well, it's for the experts. It's not for me, right? So I started to instead, and I don't know if it's relevant, but I'll say it anyway, to have kind of two streams, right? And one for the more kind of more training, like more directive, more like, well, do this, do that kind of thing. So that when you're on the shoe level, it's much more attractive because I'm being told real pragmatic things on what to do. But equally, having another stream where it's much more debates and much more open-ended and more for the experts in inverted quotes. And you could think that it might create a bit of a barrier, right? Why have a two segregated groups? But it's not like everybody was allowed to go anywhere, right? It was just trying to fit a different audience, really.
Sure,
right?
sure. No, genius. That's genius ideas. Thank you so much.
Cool. All right. Guess what? There's only one left, and then I think. So, how can we do team self-assessment? Sorry, Sharon. Yes, take it on.
Sorry, actually, yeah, that was me. Yeah, see, recent times I have come to know many other artifacts, something like team self-assessment and team skill matrix and team holiday calendar or something like that. Some 9 artifacts I come across. I know they're not mentioned in a Scrum guide, but just an agile artifacts, you could say. So has anybody tried this team self-assessment in practical, and how does it work? Means like, what are the areas team needs to focus on? So we have a meeting with the team members and assessing the areas of focus. So is anybody has done practical this team self-assessment?
Do you mean as part of a retrospective?
Yeah, it's it's kind of retrospective only, but it's a complete artifact. Then we will discuss with the team members and the areas of focus. Yeah, kind of.
So can I ask as well whether it's so I can interpret this two ways, I guess. I can see this being like a how would you say, like a test, that to check that people are really doing what they should be doing, kind of from a top-down management sort of thing. When we need to assess the team to see whether they're doing Scrum properly, like the Scrum police coming to check on you, or is it in the spirit of improvement and we want to learn and get better at what we do, and then more of a retrospective, like Alistair said. Which one is it, do you think, Shravan, in your case?
I actually I didn't look any example in internet, but I attended the webinar, and the guy told like every team will get some score, self-assessment score.
Okay, yeah.
And so I wondered if anybody has tried this model.
Yeah, I've just gone.
No, you carry on. It's all right.
I think we've both done the same thing, and I've just been doing a quick search on Google to see what comes up. There's quite a lot of stuff on there, different websites which seem to support or help us do self-assessment. I haven't used any that look at the team in that sense. Something I did do was I used what I used to call the happiness metrics. I think I'll have to have a slightly more professional term for it going forwards. But I used to do the happiness metric where I would actually ask people, on a scale of 1 to 5, how do they feel about their role? Scale 1 to 5, how do they feel about the team or the project or the company, whichever was relevant at the time, and then have them explain why. And that was just a brilliant way to pull out some really interesting challenges that people were having and so on. And it was really great also to monitor if things were sort of starting to fall off a cliff. So I've done that, Shravanth, but I haven't used this. Not saying it doesn't sound like a good idea though.
I have used what you're talking about, Sharaf, in a way. So basically, there is a document that covers all the different areas of Agile, and they have a scale of beginner to where your team's developed to, and as a Scrum Master you can sit there and go, okay, in this particular area this. But we did that for a while. I did this when I was working in HMS, and then we developed our own. So we did that for a while, and the problem with that is the new Scrum Masters were coming on board who had a little less experience. The way we were using was saying, as a Scrum Master, assess the team yourself and see if there's an areas that you think you can focus on in coaching, and that's what it was for originally. And then Scrum Masters started going to their teams with it, and because there were so many things and so many options, the teams freaked out and thought they were being graded. So we said, okay, this isn't the way to go. So then we looked at the Spotify model and came up with a health check thing, but then we developed that actually into the different areas that are most important. Am I able to share something?
Yeah, sure.
Do you mind? Because
yeah,
I've recently I've presented at Agile recently, but also at my company around something that I created as a model with one of my things. If I just
yeah, please go ahead.
Share. Let me do.
I think you can just do that, can't you? Or do you have to?
Host disable. Oh, I can't, unfortunately. Right. So
If you enable, David, you can enable others to share.
Yeah.
It's a funky thing with Zoom that you have to
allow
it.
Where is that setting?
I'm not sure where it is. I'm just
who knows with Zoom. But I can explain it. So basically, I've recently, with a couple of colleagues last year, we were asked to present our experiences to our Scrum Master community in this boost camp, because there was only 3 of us Scrum Masters with outside company experience, where everybody else was homegrown Scrum Masters. And the Agile coaches at the time wanted us to share what our experience as a high performing teams. And obviously to everybody, a high performing team can be a myriad of things in a myriad of situations. You know, your team can only sometimes become as high performing as the company allows based on how the company is running, right? As Alice has already said, sometimes if you haven't got the leadership there's only as far as you can go, and then the team can't really get any further because those blockers aren't being unblocked and they're not being allowed to be empowered. So I created with a colleague a sun basically around the most important things that we considered helps a team move forward in either Shuhari or forming, storming and norming, because all those scale of when you look at all the different types of how to build a team and dysfunctional teams and stuff, they all actually are quite overlapping and have very similar sort of things in how to move your teams forward, and what actually means from your team becoming forming to performing, and same with shootery, right? So there's a definite overlap there. So we looked at several different things. So in my mind, you could talk to your team about, you know, communications as one topic. Do you have a common purpose? Are there clear roles? Are they defined? Do people know what they are? Is there accepted leadership? You know, what is that leadership doing for you? You know, how can you improve your processes? Are they effective? And how are your relationships? You know, are they solid?
So, Melinda, I was just going to ask.
Or will it push you back? And then ask your teams where they are. Yeah.
So yeah, I was just going to ask because I was wondering about the at what level the questions would be, because I've tried that before, and the problem is as soon as you make an artifact, right, that means you've codified what you expect things to be, and as soon as you do that, then you stop innovation or you stop change, right? So we talked about Scrum versus Kanban quickly before, and you know, if you ask about your sprint, then it's well, it doesn't make sense because I'm doing Kanban. So you know, how was your sprint? I can't answer that. And do you know what I mean? So as soon as you codify
you've got
things,
to make it as generic as possible.
So it's got to be generic, right?
Yes,
but then,
it's a very generic,
or high level
understanding of what it is.
But if you make it so generic and high level, does it lose? You know, it becomes a bit fluffy and
which is why you have to be prescriptive around what areas you're covering and have a really good meaning for that. What it is you're discussing in terms of solid relationships, and just get your teams to measure themselves. You know, your teams will know if they can survive, if they're at the point where they're trusting each other, where they can ask questions that, you know, they may think in their own head is stupid, or whether they can't. You know, that whether they feel there's trust in the team, they'll be able to measure themselves between 1 and 5, for example, 5 being awesome, 1 being low, or whichever way around you're doing it, where they think they are on that scale. And and if they're low on a few of these areas, then they say, okay, then how do we tackle that? How do we make an action to allow us in the next 3 months' time to come back, have a look at this again, and have we progressed?
And I suppose
so you can come up with anything like that, but as long as the team are measuring themselves and they're stating, okay, then these are the areas we want to improve. You could do it against the Agile Manifesto. The 12 principles is another great one. Where are we against these principles, 1 to 5? Are we there yet? Are we not?
I like that one. Yeah, and I suppose it's got to be consistent for a relatively long period of time, right, to see any trends. Because if you change the question too frequently, then you can't really tell what's changed or what's what. Right?
And we did that across the whole of the HMRC Centre. We developed from the Spotify model. We came up with a better sort of understanding of the areas that we all wanted to focus at the teams. And every 4 months, every team got together and went through this. And what was good from that was highlighting the commonalities between the teams and what was blocking them. So a lot of the time, the things the teams could control, they were already controlling. The stuff that they were struggling with, that they needed the leadership to help them with, this was a really good point in time to raise those things, because then all the Scrum Masters got together and said, right, these are results from my teams, and we'd look at the patterns, work out what the main things are causing the teams to slow down or block them, and then we'd take those things to the leadership team and we'd present them. So we wouldn't take everything, we'd take those sort of top 4 things that we thought if the leadership can help us with, then it would help the teams progress. And then the teams would take on any actions they'd already identified.
And now, I guess now you've got data as well, right, to prove your point, as opposed to just anecdotes and that people might not listen to, right? So if you bring data like this to the management and leadership team, they go, oh yeah, okay, I can, people have been telling me there's a problem about X, but now I can see, right? It's not just this odd team there. It's actually multiple teams. So let's do something, right?
Yeah. So just find out what works for you, and trial it with your team. And then if it works with your team, trial it with some other teams and some other Scrum Masters. And if let that make improvements. And then if you've got a number of teams, everybody do it on a quarterly basis, and hopefully then, you can then take the things that are stopping all the teams and get leadership to sort some stuff, and any personal things that the teams can resolve themselves, they can action and measure next time. So you don't have to go for any particular prescribed thing, just you can make your own up, use the Agile principles, all those things. There's lots of options there.
So I guess for Avance, it depends what you want to use this for, right? If it's for tracking a team, or if it's, what's it for? Is it to bring up issues to your leadership team, or is it more of a checklist? So that, because I've seen this before in retrospectives where I say, oh yeah, we should have talked about that and we didn't. So is it more of a checklist to remember to look at this aspect and that aspect, or what is it for? I think it's a question you need to answer, I guess, to be able to create that thing properly.
The retrospective, we do discuss the issues related to project and how we improve that project and task level issues. But if any issues related to project, probably product owner itself, maybe the team feels like, product owner, he will have to explain the acceptance criteria in a proper manner, or something like those issues. It is not related to more than a project. The issues, I thought like that, any issues related to outside of the project.
Okay. Yeah.
So again, if you had a topic like vision, for example, does your team understand the vision? What is it they're working towards? Is it clear enough, etc.? If they come back with a 2 out of 5, you've got a clear thing there, and then you can work out, okay, what would help us more of this? Then you can have, as a Scrum Master, that discussion with your product owners. Okay, the teams, are listing these areas that maybe we can work on together to improve, to enable them to have that vision. So it's just working out the areas of importance to you and your teams, really, what you think really matters.
Yeah.
But yeah, that big long one that's got like a list of 20 and 4 different scales, throw it out the window very quickly. That's a lot of admin. and doesn't really bring you that much back for the time you invest in it.
And did you have the experience that the teams were or felt they were like monitored or or checked with this? So is that a danger that could be with those assessment? I mean, even if it's self-assessed, right? There could be a fear around like, oh, what's going to happen with that data after that, right? What it, again, it's down to the psychological safety that we talked about earlier. But if that's low, right, to begin with, it might not be a great thing to do, because it could say, oh, look at this, we're being
well, what
monitored.
we did is once we actually created a board on, I think it was Confluence, something that had an Excel sheet that once we got all the team scores went on there, we could see the happiness index, and everybody could see each other's happiness index, but we were very clear that nothing was a comparison on any other team. But what it helped us focus, and then we'd actually then share all the top things that we were taking to leadership across all the teams, and then anybody could then come back to us and say, actually, that thing you've got there low in the list, we already think that's really important, even though we didn't make that clear at the time. People had a chance to come and feedback into that as well, and also put ideas forward. So we just made everything really visible and really transparent. And anything that came back, and then the leadership every month would do a talk to the teams anyway and say, look, we've had your latest health check and you've come back with these things, and so at the moment we're tackling this and this, and this is what we're planning to do about it. So again, just that feedback loop, so everybody was clear what was going on. It wasn't a measuring tool. They had much worse measuring tools that I hated than the team health checks, and the teams understood that.
Yeah, because what you don't want, right, is this thing you feel, you're in the team, you feel this thing, you don't really see the results, and it goes off to the management team for them to change things without you being even involved or having seen any of it. So what you really want is exactly. So what you really want is an internal thing at first, at least, right? So it's for us to improve. It's not for anybody else to care about, really. And if there is an issue there that we want to escalate to, then we agree that that's what we do, right? But so that the team is empowered, is in control of all this data, right? And it could be anonymized within the team as well, right? If you want to increase safety, I suppose. But if you're the if you're the developer on the team and you're scared that you're the only one who says something negative about aspect blah, then and you feel like everybody disagrees with you and you don't want to be the one, you could easily anonymize this sort of test, I suppose, so you get a picture of the team, right? And then you get another data like that, right? That how diverse are the answers. That's a good indication of what's going on in the team as well, right?
Yeah.
Like, do we all agree more or less, or do we have a lot of variance in how we see things? Because that's an interesting point, I think, from a coach or scrum master as well point of view, right? Like,
definitely.
I've got a team that really disagrees on most things. or
that's right? My current team.
Or do I have a team that's rather homogeneous in how they think? And because that could be bad too, right? If a team like we all agree on everything, it's like, okay, maybe we don't have enough diversity of thoughts here. But equally, if it's all over the place, then what do you do, right? So it could be some good data there. Absolutely.
Brilliant.
Does that help, Shravan? Do we answer your question at all here?
Yes, that's a great explanation. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent.
That's really interesting.
Cool. Well, guys, thank you. I'm looking at the time.
It's a bit later.
It's late. It's really good. But thanks for all this discussion. That was really good, I thought. So thanks for your time. Although it was a small committee, but I think even better, we could explore those topics probably deeper than you could if you had a lot more people. So I thank you for that. That was great.
Thanks for welcoming us, because obviously this is the one good thing about the pandemic. The one good thing is that meetups have gone online, so we suddenly have access to a wealth of people that we wouldn't normally in our local area, and I've really took advantage of that where I can. I've really enjoyed it.
No, that's really good. I mean, normally this meetup is for Agile Oxfordshire, so as the name implies, it's for Oxford and around Oxford, and we usually meet in a pub down in Oxford. You know, we have a beer and all that. It's very informal, but we've been able to see people from all over the place, and you know,
Yeah, that is
that's
true.
really good. Really good.
Attended
Awesome.
meetings all over the world. Even last week I attended one meeting in Africa as well.
Oh wow, yeah,
Genius.
amazing. Yeah,
It's good to get knowledge from people from various locations and various, you know, it enhances my Scrum knowledge and Agile knowledge.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So just for the
Agree.
little advertisement, there is another meetup group local to Oxfordshire called Agile, and it's hosted by my friend Mike, and I'll be speaking there. So it's in 2 weeks, I think, the 14th. Anyway, have a look if you're interested. I'm going to talk about agility rather than agile, because
Oh, great.
a lot of people talk about agile, but they forget about agility, which is kind of what we've been talking about really today as well. So I'll go and explore that in a lot more details. And then for this group as well, I've got a few people lined up to give some sort of interactive workshop sessions. In the next few months. So watch out the Meetup page. There'll be some posts soon about those events. So here's my little advertisement.
Superb,
But
David.
if anybody wants to reach out, you'll find there's not many Melindas, so you'll find Melinda Marsh on LinkedIn quite easily.
Very
Perfect.
good. Very
That'd be
good.
great for us to carry on the
We should
conversation.
do that. Yeah, great. Thank you for your inputs and contributions. Yeah. As I said, this was recorded, so I'll probably post it on the YouTube channel for the group at some point, and I'll put the link up on the page so you can access it. So
Awesome.
thank you for your time again.
Thank you.
And
Thank you, David, for organising this. A great structure, great great way of doing it, and thank you both Melinda and Sarant for your great inputs. Really learned a lot today. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you for your contributions, and have a good evening.
Take care.
Thank you guys.
And stay
Bye.
safe. Bye.
Yes, you too. Bye.
Bye. Cheers.